I'd love to stay here for a bit on this idea of searching for wisdom, making sense of life. As a psychiatrist, how do you make sense of maybe, if you will, some sort of inner call to wisdom or some sort of what seems to be like insatiable curiosity,
Yeah.
if you will?
How do I make sense of it? Wow. Well, in a sense, we live in a world that's increasingly, I'd say, cynical, complex, chaotic, and confusing. In many ways, it's always been like that, but it seems to be even more so. And we're presented with challenges that it's not clear often which the right way to turn is, what the right way to do. It's like in relationships. If I give that example, I've been very influenced by the Bible's interpretation of wisdom. And in the Old Testament, there are two proverbs back to back. The first says, "Answer a fool according to his folly, or he'll be wise in his own eyes." And don't answer a fool according to his folly, or you'll become like him. So they're saying opposite things. You're in a meeting, somebody says something which you think is really foolish. Do you say something in the meeting, or do you say nothing? And really, you need wisdom because it depends on the context, it depends on the subject, it depends on how much you know the people, it depends on who else is in the room. So many variables that you can never work that out. I mean, that's one part. Your question was as a psychiatrist, and I think for me, one of the big things is that in psychiatry we have the medical model with the way we look at people, and body looking at sort of as a whole person. And I'd say that we are such complex beings with such an intricate number of choices. It's fascinating. It's a hugely fascinating area because two people can be in the same circumstance, go through the same, as it were, trauma, and they can respond in completely opposite ways. Someone's a child of, say, of an alcoholic, and says, "Well, I'm going to be alcoholic as well because my dad was an alcoholic," and somebody else says, "Well, my dad was an alcoholic, and I'm never going to touch alcohol ever again. I'm never going to go near any alcohol, and I'm going to avoid all substances." Complete opposite responses. Now, why does one person respond one way? Why does the other person respond the other? I mean, that's I think one of the fascinating things about us as human beings, and really makes me very interested in. I'm a psychiatrist and a coach, and always fascinated by why people do what they do. Yeah.
It is so interesting, as you mentioned there in your story of not necessarily fitting in. In your experience, in your work, maybe there's not, identical universal experiences, but maybe there's some common themes of that not necessarily fitting in or not feeling
Yes.
enough, if you will.
Yes. No, I know. I see what you're getting at. I mean, for me, it was quite obvious in terms of being as an immigrant. But then what I've realised as I've got older, as I've talked to a huge variety of different patients and clients, is that all of us feel about that in some way or other, and it might not be obvious or apparent. Um, but for the individual, it can be a big thing. And the way I sort of think of it is like major surgery and minor surgery. You've got major surgery as in terms of
Mm.
say, a heart bypass or a liver transplant or something like that, and minor surgery might be a blood test or just a very sort of simple procedure. But if it's your body, it's all major surgery, regardless of what it's objectively. And so what might
Mm.
appear as a relatively minor thing to an outsider, for the person concerned, it can be huge. And you don't know unless you really get to know the person and find out what's going on beneath the surface. And so the impact of that trauma, if you like, whatever it is, can be so variable.